You might be mad at me for this flip, but I know exactly what I want to do with this piece. I'm Lisa with Ivy Lane Interiors, and today's project is this buffet. Now I got it for free from a friend, and it's in pretty good shape overall, but there is some problems on one of the drawers, and I have a problem with the top drawer, but I have all of the hardware is intact. It's a big buffet. I haven't done buffets in a while, so I'm excited to try a paint color that I've been wanting to try for a long time. If you follow me over on Instagram, I've been really looking at a lot of different kinds of paints. And a lot of people recommend Wise Owl to me, and I've never tried it. So, I can't really speak to something I've never tried. So I ordered a gallon of their 1 hour enamel in the color Charleston Green. Now, I have seen several pieces painted with this color, and I've always admired it. And I thought it would be beautiful on this buffet. Now I am going to do a mix of wood and paint. So the top and probably the base, I will probably go wood, but some of the elements are going to be paint as well. But I am going to make it beautiful. So let's go.
So it's really a lovely piece. Overall, it's in really pretty good shape for its age. I'm not exactly sure how old it is. You can see I'm missing a finial. I do have it. I will reattach it. I've got some crackling on the curved part of the drawers, but I do have all of the hardware. This particular drawer is not working right, so I got to figure out what's going on with it. But it's a lovely piece. I really, really like it. You can see on the doors there, I've got some problems there. I'm going to have to fill those in. Like I said, I know some people want me to do a full refinish, but these are beautiful, partly painted. And so I think if I can refinish the base and the top, I think it's going to be stunning. And I think it's going to be really pretty for a modern home. You can see there I'm missing a piece of trim on that side, so I'll have to recreate it from some trim on the other side. But like I said, overall, I think it's in really good shape. Again, I'm not really sure how old it is. I'm kind of thinking maybe, I don't know, 30s, 40s, 50s. I don't even know. But it's pretty old. It does have this detachable pediment, but you can see there's a big hole, so I can't exactly fill that in and get rid of it. I'm going to have to refinish it as well. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to do with it because I am missing that finial and it's got a big chunk out of it. So I'm just going to start with, I'm going to strip the top and I'm going to strip the base, and we'll go from there. I'm using Greenie's stripper. This is a non-toxic stripper. I've used it a few times now. I'm a really big fan. You can use my discount code. It's in the description. But I don't promote a lot of specific products, but this one I have been super impressed with. When I'm putting stripper on drawers, I want to make sure I put some painter's tape underneath there, and I forgot to do it. I want to make sure that the stripper doesn't fall down into the drawer. Now I'm ready to take off all of the hardware. Sometimes you can date a piece by the hardware, especially if you have locks. Unfortunately on this one I couldn't find any dates, so I'm just going to continue taking off the hardware and get it prepped for priming. I am taking off the doors. I know a lot of people just leave them on, but I do like to take them off. Vintage hardware is sometimes hard to reattach. So what I like to do is when I take them off is I try to label them. And so I'm labeling this one right bottom, and I'll relabel it on the top. And then I'm actually going to label it on the door too. That way I can reattach them once I'm all done polishing them up. After I wait about an hour, I'm ready to go ahead and start stripping the top. So you can see I'm getting some of the finish off, but it's not going down too deep. So this is a really thick finish. You'll see I'm just going to go ahead and take off what I can. I think if I had done a second round, it might have gone a little bit deeper, but I'm going to have to get my Carbide scraper out for this one. I'll clean it with a little bit of acetone to get some more of that finish off, but you can see it's not going down nearly to raw. I use a variety of tools when I'm trying to get the finish off of detailed areas like this. So I have a wire brush. I've just picked up these little abrasives that you can attach to your drill. So they come in a variety of different sizes. So I have like this little circular one, and you'll see I have another shape, and it just helps me to get into those nooks and crannies. So anything that kind of saves my hands from trying to get into all of those details, because that's a lot of curves. And these did a really good job in trying to get into some of those curves. You have to be careful when you're dealing with carvings, because if you're using sandpaper or something like that, you want to make sure that you're not sanding away the profile. You know, it's carved for a reason, and it's curved, but you don't want to erase some of that profile. So I'm going to go ahead and get my carbide scraper out. Now, even though it didn't go down to raw, this is taking me very little effort. So again, I was very impressed with the greenies. It got quite a bit off, and I am using my carbide scraper, but it's honestly not requiring very much effort at all. I like to use these sanding contour pads. I just wrap some sandpaper around them, so I find something that fits the profile, and then it helps me to get into those detailed spaces. I'm using 80 grit when I'm trying to get finish off, so because this one needed a little bit more help, not as much came off during the stripping process, I like to start at 80, and then I'll go up to 120, and I'll stop at 180. I like this interface pad that I got for my Festool. It allows me to get into some of the curved and carved areas without damaging those profiles. You can see here that I'm just going to go through a variety of tools. So I have a little pocket scraper. I have one that has like a pear-shaped scraper on it. I have one that has a triangle on it. And then I have all of those little sanding contours. And I just find things that fit the profile. So I just switch out tools. Again, I'm starting with 80 because I got a lot of finish that I got to get off. This is always the longest sand. And so it takes the longest to get through, take all of that finish off. And once I'm done with 80, then honestly, 120 and 180 just doesn't take as long because I've already gotten all the finish off. Now I'm just refining my scratch pattern. So that top drawer had a felted interior. I'm assuming it was for like silverware or something. So it was in pretty rough shape. So I decided I'm just going to take my steamer to it. I'm going to take it all off. it was the way they put it on, they must have had it on the bottom, and then they put the dividers on top of that. So it was a mess. It was all underneath, all of the little dividers. So it took some time to get it all off and then to get all that adhesive off as well. So I need to recreate this little trim piece. So what I'm going to do, I have this really cool mold set that you can use these two putties together, use a 1-to-1 ratio. You mix them until they're uniform color, and then you're going to create a mold. So I'm going to just take half of each, mix it together, and then I'm going to go to the other side of the buffet, and I'm going to put it on the piece of trim that is existing, and I'm going to create a mold. While that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and scuff sand the rest of the body to get ready for primer. I'm going to use some blue tape on the top because I'm not going to seal that yet. I'm going to go, but I don't want to get any paint on it. So I'm going to make sure I mask all that off so that no paint gets on the top. I'm going to do the same for the bottom. I want to make sure that those legs don't get any overspray on them as well. Now that my mold is dry, I'm going to take it off, and you can see it's created a nice little channel there of that actual molding. Now I'm going to take some wood filler. You can use Bondo. This is J-Weld wood filler, and you're just going to do the putty, and you're going to add a little bit of hardener to it. Mix it up really well, and then I'm going to put it inside the mold. And I'm going to basically recreate that little piece of trim. So I'm going to put it in, and then I'm just going to let it set up until it's dried. Once it's dried, I'm going to carefully pop it out of my mold. And you can see now I have a little piece of trim. Now, obviously I need to sand it. That's the nice thing about body filler, is it really is nice and sandable. So I'm just going to sand some of those rough edges, kind of see how it lines up. I'm going to sand those rough edges. I'm going to sand the back. I'm just going to kind of look at it. I'm going to go ahead and cut the existing molding so that it's flat. And then that way I can kind of butt up the new one exactly to it. Now I'm going to use my sanding contours. I'm going to find a profile that matches the existing trim. Just going to wrap some sandpaper around it. I'm going to gently sand it. So you have to be careful. I don't want to over sand, but I'm trying to get it to be a perfect match to the existing trim. Once I'm happy with it, now I'm just going to go ahead and glue it on, let it set. Then I can always come back later and fill it in some more if I need to make some additional corrections. I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of glazing Bondo because I really want to make sure I get that little area where it joins together really smooth. And so I did have a couple other little areas I want to smooth out. So the glazing Bondo is really good when you have some shallow areas that you need to fill in. So I'll go ahead and apply that, let it set, come back with my sanding contour again, and just blend that in. Now I'm going to use the glazing Bondo again for all of those little cracks that I had on the doors. You can see both of the doors had this cracking on them, so I'm just going to use some glazing Bondo and try to minimize that as much as I can. After it's dried, I'm going to give it a really nice sand, and then I'll be ready to move on to primer. For the body, I'm going to go ahead and use some liquid sandpaper on those detailed areas. It's not an essential step. I just really like to do it with some of these highly detailed areas because I really want to make sure that I've hit all those areas, make sure that they're really nice and etched up so that when I go to prime and paint, I have really good adhesion. So I was missing the finial on this particular one, and I'm also missing a chunk out of it. You can see on the back there. So I'm going to go ahead and glue it up, and then I'm going to use the same process. I'm going to create a mold from the finial on the other side, put the wood filler in it, and I'm going to recreate that little corner of the finial as well.
ready to prime the buffet. But you know, I'm using Wise Owl 1 hour enamel. I've never used it before, but I vaguely remember some chatter online about it not playing nicely with shellac. So I reached out to my local furniture friend Tabitha, because she uses Wise Owl all the time, and she said, oh yeah, she says don't use shellac. But that's what I was going to use to seal it. This is a dark piece, and so typically you want to use something that will lock in the tannins. Tannins is something that exists in the wood, and sometimes when you put a finish on it, it will bring those tannins to the surface and it'll bleed through your paint. It's a bigger deal when you're using white paint. I am using a dark color, so it shouldn't be as big an issue, but another reason why I like to use shellac is it will seal in odors, it will seal in contaminants. Sometimes when you're dealing with vintage pieces, you don't really know what it's all been through. And so if you're putting a finish on it, especially a painted finish, I've had finishes that it literally would not accept the paint. There was some kind of weird contaminant underneath it, and until I added shellac, it wouldn't hold the paint. So here's my plan. I am going to use shellac, but I'm going to use this called a seal coat, and this is a de-waxed shellac. And so it will give me all the properties of shellac by sealing and everything, but because it doesn't have the wax, I'm hoping that that will help. This is going to be my first coat. For my second coat, I'm going to use a tinted gray Rust-Oleum 2-in-1 primer. This will go over the shellac, so hopefully create a barrier between the shellac and the Wise Owl, and I won't have any kind of adhesion issues. I'm also hoping that the de-waxed element of the shellac will help as well. If the shellac is an issue at all, hopefully this will create the barrier, and then I'll move on to the Wise Owl. So let's hope that works. Here we go.
So I'm just using a little siphon gun that's attached to my air compressor. This is really nice to use when you're using some kind of a solvent base, because this does have to be cleaned up with either ammonia or denatured alcohol. So it's a little bit more of a cleanup. It's not water-based. So I like to use something really simple like this siphon gun because it just has very few moving parts. It's really easy to clean. I'm going to do a nice little scuff sand in between coats. Then I'll be ready to move on to the tinted primer. Again, I'm going to do a scuff sand. I always sand in between my coats. So I'm going to give it a nice little scuff sand, make sure I get everything tack clothed off, and then I'll be ready to move on to my paint. So you remember I'm using Wise Owl. This is the first time I've ever used it. I put it in my Erlex 5700. It sprayed beautifully. It did say on there that this is one that sprays better than rolls. I know some people might roll it, but I actually had to try rolling it. I don't think it rolls well. I think it is definitely meant to be sprayed. So this is what it looked like after the first coat. I'm not sure if that's what it's supposed to look like. I didn't know if maybe some of the shellac was still coming through, but I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to do another little scuff sand, and then I'll do a second coat and see what happens. And I guess the second coat is pretty much what you need, because after the second coat, it really laid down beautifully, and all of those little imperfections just went away. I did not paint the backside, but I am going to refresh them with a little bit of Danish oil. And I'm going to do the same for the interior of the sides as well. So if you remember, I did go ahead and label everything. So once I cleaned everything, the label is still there. So I was able to match up the right hinge to the right door, and then I could reattach it pretty simply. I debated back and forth on how to actually finish this. I usually apply some liquid, typically either water or 50-50 mixture denatured alcohol and water, and I apply it to the wood just to kind of see what it looks like in its natural state. And honestly, I thought it was beautiful the way it was. So I decided, instead of adding a stain, I'm just simply going to seal it. So I'm using Osmo's Poly-X hard wax oil. You simply wipe it on, and then you wipe off the excess. You need to do a couple coats depending on what your application is. For the top, I'll use a thicker application so more product goes on it. I don't have to use quite as thick of an application for the base because it's not going to be getting quite as much use, but I'll go ahead and put 2 coats on the base. I'm using a white pad for the top. It kind of holds a little bit more product and applies more to the top. So a rag application applies probably the least amount. If you apply it with a white pad or a paintbrush or a roller, it puts on more product and just allows you to have a more durable finish. Once it sets up for a few minutes, all you have to do is come back with a lint-free rag and you just simply wipe off the excess. You're going to let it dry overnight, and then I'll put another coat on. You can tell the base had some repairs because it had some white areas where they probably had either put dowels and some wood filler or something in there. So I came back with my Blend All Sticks by Mohawk. I'm just going to color in some of those areas that need to be fixed. So I'll start light. I'll keep going darker until I get a little bit closer to the tone of the wood, and then I'll seal it with their vinyl sealer. I'm going to add these little door catches to the sides because there was nothing holding the doors in. So you just simply have some adhesive on one side and it's magnetic, and that works really well. The drawers, I'm just going to clean them with a 50-50 mixture of denatured alcohol and water. I'm going to refresh some of the interior with Danish oil, and then I'll go ahead and line the drawers. Well, let's look back at the before. This buffet, it ended up being a lot more work than I anticipated. This is a long video. I was like, wow, there's a lot of little details. Obviously, having to fix that finial, kind of recreate that corner of it, having to recreate the trim on the other side. Man, all the detail that was on that base, lot of sanding, lot of stripping. I had to fill in all those cracks. Did I get it perfect? No, but it was a lot better than it was in the beginning. So sometimes pieces just take a lot more work than you anticipate because of those small details that just kind of multiply, like hardware and like having to add the door catches and, all those little things that you don't really think about initially when you start the project. But after a lot of stripping and a lot of sanding and several coats of paint, here is the finished product. What do you think? I love this color combination. I'm really glad that I decided to just go natural and I just simply sealed that top. Can you believe that? That is just oiled. Just oil. It's stunning. I really love the green, the Charleston green. I've admired this color for a really long time, and I'm really glad that I tried it. Obviously, you can see here's my little repair. It's not 100% perfect, but hey, considering it was missing completely, I've got something there that recreated it, so I'm pretty impressed with it. I'm always continuing to level up my skills. The more I do it, the better I'll get. I love how it curves and all of those fun little details. I considered gilding, but at the end of the day, kind of wanted it to shine on its own. Here's the finial. Again, it's not 100% perfect, but I recreated that side. You can see it has a ton of storage. I did a lot on the interior, did all the Danish oil, lined the drawers, added those catches. They work perfect. Easy open, easy close. So man, I love it. Remember the drawer that I thought had problems? Well, come to find out, it's actually a secret drawer. So if you pull the top drawer open, there is a little plank that allows you to push it up and open it, because this was the silverware drawer. And so I thought there was something wrong with it, but come to find out it was designed that way. So it's really cool. Let me show you how it works. I'll pull out the top drawer and I'll show you there's a board that's attached underneath the drawer. And when you push it up, the drawer pops out. And there's a spring in the back that allows you to actually push the drawer in. So you have to make sure that that piece of wood stays on the back of the frame support there, or the drawer won't stay in. So there's a little bit of manipulation there, but it's a really clever idea and it makes it completely seamless. You don't even know that that drawer is there. Pretty cool. So let's talk a little bit about Wise Owl. Did I like it? Absolutely. It is $132 a gallon. It's a lot of money for paint, but I really love the sheen. It was easier to spray. I do not recommend painting it with a brush or a roller unless you're really, really good with a roller. Definitely easier to spray from me. But at the end, would I use it again? Absolutely, I would. So tell me what you think in the comments. Do you love this color combination? Thanks so much for watching.